Flag salute. Who wants to lead it for us? Okay.
Which way to go? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
You go ahead. It's just on the mouse.
Roll call.
Wow,
Here.
Lawson,
Here.
Myers, Colgrove, O'Gorman,
Here.
Waddy, absent, George.
Here.
Thank you.
We do have a quorum for adoption of agenda. This is not a regular meeting, it's a special meeting, so I'm not reading that. But I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Debbie moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Martha second.
I'd like to amend item 3C before the vote.
3C, okay.
So consideration of the establishment of the registered nurse position, what you received in your packets was the position. We got some input from CSEA. And so there's another, just the amendments, the changes are in the red line that was in your packet. So Tom, yours is over to the side there. It looks like this. So the additions were from CSEA that we're agreeing to, and everything else is exactly the same. So I would just propose to adopt the edited one with CSEA's input.
Debbie, you want to amend your motion to accept the
Yes.
amendment to
Yes,
3C.
I amend my motion to accept the agenda by
3C?
3C.
Okay. Is that okay with you, Martha?
And second that.
Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Unanimous motion is approved. The agenda is adopted. Public comment on individual agenda items. Do we have any public comment?
No public comment.
No public comment. Consent items, number 3, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent items.
I move we approve the consent item.
Rob
I
moves,
second that.
Debbie seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion approved.
And I just want to clarify, the unity of Tom, Tom moved, right?
I think Rob and I both did at the same time. so
Oh, okay.
either way.
Oh, I heard Rob.
Okay,
So who, go ahead and put Rob.
that's what Lorelei said.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I can't hear out of my right ear, so I didn't hear you, Tom. I'm sorry. Okay, action items. We have one item, approval of elementary and secondary school emergency relief funds 3 ESSR 3. Is there a motion to approve?
I move we approve the elementary and secondary school emergency relief funds.
Okay, Tom moves. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Rob second. Okay, discussion.
I want to thank you all for coming to another special meeting. I think the average board in the average school is having 2 meetings a month, really, because of the one-time funding for COVID relief. A lot of it requires either public hearings, special timelines for meetings. So this is round 3 of the ESSER funding, this is through the American Recovery Plan. We have 3 years to spend the money. So the plan is kind of broad. It doesn't have like specific types of professional development. It's allocating funding for the different categories. It's been discussed with the board. It's been presented to the IPP task force. So feel free to ask any questions. I think Carmi, you have to do is it annual or the reporting? Quarterly reporting on the expenditures. So once it comes to life, things are being spent. Federal funding, so it's got its kind of narrow restrictions. But the two broad categories: in-person learning and recovering learning from the lost instructional time. Safe
for the safe in-person learning, I see you have tied these to the specific goals and actions in our LCAP. And I read through it once and I liked what I saw. And, let's get feedback from Erica is here. Just in time, Erica.
Awesome.
We're on the SR3 plan.
Is there a copy by chance?
You don't have a copy of it?
I do on my iPad. Here, you can give it Craig.
That's okay.
So did you, any comments, any corrections?
Okay.
Hard copy. Oh, she's got them.
I think the plan looks good. I thought it was well-rounded. It addressed a range of issues.
The only overlap with another one of the, ESSER related plans is the expanded learning opportunities. So we put in multi-tiered academic interventions and supports. And so there'll be this dovetailing of monies that we have allocated through the expanded learning opportunity grant for this current year. And when that ends, so that would be for after school tutoring. And that's in the lost instructional time. And then next year we would allocate ESSER funds, but we don't have it allocated through this plan for all 3 years because it's already identified by the teachers as something they wanted in that expanded learning opportunity. That was another special meeting we had.
Any other comments or concerns?
Well, I kind of have a question, but I mean, it's
Yeah.
not real. I just that I saw on Facebook the other night that the questionnaire was put out on Facebook. Was that person trying to say that we hadn't distributed it?
Yeah, I saw that it was dated September 3rd and she said she just got it. That was her
Yeah.
question. And I know her children were on independent study, so I don't know if that delayed it or.
Okay. Did we get a pretty good parent?
Not really with parents. We really got it from the students. That was really where
we
we
did?
got.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
The students were the main survey respondents. So we did that at school.
Wow.
We had to just do it right there. So we were able to, one of the things with this plan was taking recommendations from other plans and saying like, it didn't have to be in isolation because the values of the community should be incorporated in here. And the state is saying, presumably you really asked the community, what are some priorities because the LCAP was much more robust in terms of getting input.
Yeah.
No, there have not. We sent them out. All school sites sent them out paper versions. I mean, Carmi actually printed them herself. And so I just feel like.
I think on back to school night too, the surveys were, I think there was a survey online. And then at back to school night, they were handing them out physically.
Okay. Yeah, I just saw that and I
Yeah.
thought, gosh, I hope we don't get this. Once again, I hope this is out there. So I love it, by the way. That's really fun.
Any feedback? Brenda?
some questions and some feedback and apologies. My voice is kind of disappearing today. But also had a negative rapid yesterday, so don't worry. So I think I had that question as well, the same as Martha, of what the timeline of the survey and where it went out. Because as a parent, I did not receive the survey. And I don't know when and how. I hear back to school night in person in Hoopa, at Hoopa High, but were the other back to school nights in person as well? Hoopa Elementary was not, correct? That was virtual?
They did not have back to, right, correct. They had a virtual back to school night.
So surveys,
Surveys
can
were
I get
sent to the
additional information? Like how many surveys went out? How many came back? How were they distributed? When were they distributed? Because as a parent, I did not receive
Yeah.
one and I did not know that there was an ESSER 3 survey.
Yeah.
at all.
So they, I don't think I put in here the dates. I mean, I know at the LCAP, so I would have to go back and look at like what was our timeline? And
We had up until the 15th.
was when our return date, I have a.
That was the return date for the school site.
There was a place in here, I did read something about who all was,
The consulted part, that was one of my comments as well. It's on the very, what is that, the second page, where it talked about the different participation. I know that we did meet with our tribal council for that study session, which I thought was very productive. But I don't know that it fits in this plan because I don't think we got to the point to say the school district is going to be applying for funding and $5.1 million. How do you see prioritizing those COVID funds to do so? So I'm trying to figure out how we list that because that did not happen while we were here. We didn't have time to get to that. So I didn't find out about ESSER 3 funds until we had the IPP meeting, which was after that study session with the council. So I'm hesitant to list that there and feel like that does not represent what that study session was. And so I have shared the drafts that I received last week with the council, but we did not discuss it on September 23rd here in this room with the tribal council.
I think I did mention that it was coming up. There were meetings coming up, and I remember asking what the specific dates for those meetings, and one of these meetings took the place of that date. So I remember mentioning it, but it wasn't discussed.
Okay.
So Erica, is it this specific sentence, the meeting on 9/23 was a study session in which the district consulted with the Hoopa Valley Tribe?
Yeah, or I think, I think it can be listed, but I would not say that that was consultation on the ESSER 3 expenditure plan. Because we did not receive the plan or any dollars associated with the plan until late last week, which I'm appreciative of, very happy that I had a chance to see it before today.
So do you feel like the district informed the Hoopa Valley Tribe of the plan?
No, you did not.
So what kind of change should I'm just wondering what would be what's more accurate? If it wasn't consultation?
It was related to COVID, right? Like that was the reason why we met, was about COVID safety protocols and issues regarding the letter that was sent. So you could say that we had sent the letter and had concerns and that the council was able to talk to the school board about those concerns and talk about COVID, I guess, coordination.
Okay.
And it was the nurse issue too, which this plan
Yes, I agree to that.
does have
So
a registered nurse.
And is this a second nurse position that will be flying? Because the other one is already flying, correct? So
Yes.
this would be a new nurse position.
yeah. So can I just ask if I added on, the meeting was a study session which the district consulted with the Valley Tribe on, you said it
Regarding COVID-19 safety measures of the district and coordination with the tribe.
coordination. Yeah. Can I say protocols and coordination?
I think, yeah, sure.
Okay. And with the second question you asked, the district nurse is a certificated physician credentialed through the California Teaching Commission. that job is, we are trying to
Mhm.
hire for.
Mhm.
Registered nurse is separate.
A new
Yeah.
separate.
And it's, we are gonna, flight for 3 years.
Right.
Just as the
Okay.
kind of heavy lift with ESSER.
Right, okay,
No, but having a school nurse is
Great.
something we have established and we're actively seeking to recruit.
okay, great, that is helpful. Let's see. I hope, I don't know if it's possible, but if there could be a little more clarification on those paper copies of the surveys, I think that would be helpful because again, I'm not confident that those made it home.
So we're.
Except for the high school. I think the student representation, that makes perfect sense to me that happened. But for the other elementary school sites, and especially where there was not an in-person back to school night, I don't know that you got those.
So, does anybody, so what was the plan when those were sent out for each school site? Were they given directives on how to get them out or just?
Well, we have never published them ourselves and we said, okay, we've run into this issue before. Things we're sending out and they don't get distributed. So we literally made all the copies and then we give them to the school sites and school sites manage the coming and going. And I need to also talk to the director of student services because that was something that, when we were meeting as a cabinet, that he's been good about getting the surveys. And so in, out and back. But yeah, this one I did not see a lot of data.
Okay, now the QR code that was in the paper, that was for what purpose again? Was that the survey or was that? something
COVID
else?
testing.
That was to sign up for primary health.
Okay. For what?
Primary health for screening, for testing, COVID testing.
Oh, okay. The permissions for kids to be
Yes.
tested, okay.
So the whole timeline. So
Was it placed on the district website?
the survey was not. There was if you have, there was like a tile where people could read about the ESSER plan and then submit comments.
They could sit, is that in here?
I don't think that is.
I had the email, but I've taken it down because by the time I published
I was
it,
gonna look.
no, I changed it because there's 3 plans that we have to have published there, so and there's limited sites. But we didn't get any input that way either, so maybe that's why I didn't put it in.
Okay.
I didn't get any comments. We kept testing it to make sure it was working, and it was.
Okay. Any other comments or questions?
Just curious. So when this goes to the state, this goes to CDE, correct? Like 30th, is that what I remember?
Yes, within
Okay.
5 days.
So when that goes, is this all that goes, or is there additional like backup or like more detailed for breakouts of those dollar amounts, or is it?
This is
This
it,
is it, okay.
but we have to do follow-up reporting. Just
Right.
Like, oh, this year we spent this much in each of the categories.
Okay, so I think in general, there's definitely lots of good stuff for sure. I do see reflections of our IPP conversations that we had during our last task force meeting. Again, I do appreciate that we got the kind of versions as it evolved over a couple of days, so I appreciate that too. But just looking at the overall from the knowing that 20% is supposed to be for lost instructional time, and then the other 80% is kind of what we need, or kind of just any immediate needs that can be addressed with this funding. I was a little bit curious to know, and I didn't have time to sit down and kind of plug in numbers to see it, but trying to figure out almost like a direct and indirect breakdown to see how much of this $5.5 million that's listed in this plan is actually going to like touch students as far as like direct student services. I know, and this was at the IPP meeting as well, it was talked about kind of journaling some current employee wages because so much time is taking up their COVID time of their regular duties, which I totally understand. But it just also feels somewhat of a lost opportunity that if we're just journaling wages that we already have funding for to pay people's regular salaries, except for overtime. I understand that's in there too. And there's been extra COVID testing and maybe, hopefully, I would hope, some increases for staff that are in the wellness center doing those tests. But if that's not the case, and it's just kind of like, especially administrators, just moving funds from what would already be covered into ESSER 3 funds, that feels a little problematic, or not problematic. It just feels like a missed opportunity if that's where the majority of this funding is going, as opposed to direct, like the tutoring services and the mental health services and the technology upgrades, all of those things that are in there, but just do we need more? I think the need for those things is even greater probably than what we put in the plan, of course, because we always need more things.
So our impact of lost instructional time, those are really direct student services. And I was just gonna do what our requirement is.
Requirement.
It's like 1.1 is what we are
Yeah.
required to put in there. You have that, and then that section is 1.7 million. So we're heavier. We're above the 20% requirement
Okay.
for addressing the impact of lost instructional time. I would, we have a lot in terms of facilities, which are going to impact staff and students, keeping the air clean, keeping the space. The majority is definitely not paying, shifting money around.
There's 2 new positions. Is that coming under this
Yes.
section? The wellness center coordinator as well as the new nurse position?
The registered nurse, we have an increased COVID response. That's in the safety, and we put the wellness coordinator under student impact of lost instructional time. So the wellness coordinator, because the state identified mental health services as falling under addressing the impact of lost instructional time. That's where we put the wellness coordinator. Because they'll be doing, working with practitioners, clinicians, and that's direct student services.
And I believe the only staff that we are allocating that are already established is social workers.
Social workers, yeah.
So I see, like, let's just go through here. It's under the page under addressing the impact of lost instructional time, and under that, where it starts with on the first LCAP goal 1, action 1, independent study support, contracted services for independent study. Maybe you can explain what, and then independent study teaching position, additional hours for independent study teachers of record. So maybe if we just read through this, if you have questions, let's discuss it.
Yeah, that would be helpful. I did have a question on that one specifically. Is that one position for the entire district, or is that one position per site, or is that one position for the district times 3 years? How's that 297,000?
Okay, so the 297 includes if we can contract out with the county. That's one mechanism where we can enroll students outside of our LEA and work with the county. That's one independent study teaching position. And if we're able to fill that position and that's working, I would say within that, we would take money out of the additional hours for teachers, because the additional hours for independent study teachers of record is our staff.
Right.
That's where all of that money is going right now. Well, we're working on the MOU with KTJ. We would like to be able to put that money into an independent study teaching position. So right now it's just budgeted at 1 because we have 1 vacancy that we have not been able to fill. So if we needed to kind of have a hybrid, we realized we may have all 3 services happening, but we're looking for a teacher. So that 297 is really for the year, because we don't know what the legislature is going to do for independent study next year. So everything else is really over the course of 3 years, but this is that's for this year, because that's what the expectations.
then the next one, under that wellness system coordinator position, professional development for all staff, including staff who work in the after-school education safety programs related to providing support for social emotional behavior and academic engagement, operational support of the wellness system, supplies, equipment, social emotional curriculum for classroom and after-school program. Then you've got contracted services with Humboldt, Del Norte, SELPA, and HCOE for behavioral support services to increase engagement in classrooms. So maybe just a little. How's that?
So positions are always the most expensive. So the wellness coordinator is the, that's for 3 years. Actually, I prorated this year at 80% because we're partway through the year. We, had to kind of guesstimate. I'm going to propose like a professional development summer academy. We just don't have enough days in the year to do the PD unless we do it on weekends. So we just budgeted for 5 days of professional development for as many staff as possible. Wellness center operational support, again, it kind of depends. That was our best estimate at making sure that they have all of the tools. I mean, the computers break, printers need replenishing, just so that, and I think that the wellness center, which we're really talking about, wellness system has never had its own budget. It's just been kind of kept trying. So we wanted to make sure that.
So when it says wellness system, that's really the wellness center?
I think it would be primarily because that's where offices are, but I think that, it could even be, travel and things that if there's a wellness coordinator, they're going to be really, they shouldn't be in their office all the time.
Right.
But I think that would primarily be there.
Yeah, I just didn't know if it was like system, to me, it was like district, like wide.
It is, yeah, it would be district wide if they, but I think that the majority would be in that building unless their office changed or something. And then we, in one of the other plans, I think it was the learning continuity plan, we had put in social emotional curriculum. We always want to have that as an option for, we didn't have a lot of teachers ask for that, but I think that providing that option for, second step, or I know that a lot of folks have looked at the American Indian Life Skills curriculum just so that they have some flexible funding for social emotional curriculum. And then I do want to say this contracted services is not, I realized it's the funding for that is not included in the total. So I might, because there's other special education related funding that is pending. So we had allocated $66,000 based on prior years for behavioral supports, but we just met with the SELPA. And there is one-time funding that would cover those things. So that's unlikely to come out of this funding source because the SELPA has money for professional development for teachers, classified staff, administrators, ARD, it's the alternate dispute resolution. So that SELPA wrote a plan for all of the districts. So that would be the one thing that probably we wouldn't have in this, but that wouldn't change the funding amount. The next one, or anything else on that with mental health?
I'm just looking forward to being in the loop about what curriculum is purchased in professional development stuff. That's all.
Yeah.
I'm glad that there's
And
funding
so
for those.
like from where I am, Erica, it's like putting that in, and so our PD committee and then the curriculum committee and individual school sites, we wanted to give them discretion so that they can say, this is what's going to fit for us. So it's not really being prescribed.
Great.
The educational technology, the constant need for replacing devices. We have some other good news with some of our E-rates. So this can put us on a trajectory for the next 3 years to be able to not just purchase devices, but to be able to replace them. Because that's what David and Carmen, I said, I'm going, well, if you buy them all at one year, what are you doing in 3 years when, a third of them are broken? So we will go ahead and get our E-rate devices and the ones that we can purchase through ESSER The E-rate really are supposed to be available for students to use in their home. But this budget's for about 675. And we left it Chromebooks, but we left it broad in case there's other devices, including things that are not Chromebooks.
Can we talk a little bit about that more? Does that really capture the need? Because I'm hearing, as both a parent and an education director, two separate occasions, that some classrooms have 0 Chromebooks and some classrooms have 6, and some, like, there's very few lucky ones that can actually say, we're a 1-to-1 classroom, which our district says we're a 1-to-1 district. So is that enough? Is my question.
That should, yeah, that would be enough.
For iPads and Chromebooks and additional devices, and to re-up at the end of 3 years?
Well, not further to re-up at the end of 3 years. This amount is 675 to give us. So I think right now we do have very few devices that we have been able to distribute, because they either, there was the getting them checked back in. I think it's about 10 to 15%, but just it's not worth fixing them. They're not like quality devices that you want to invest time in. So I think we lose that amount. And we have our supply chain issues. So that'll get us up. We're not saying we're 1-to-1. We would like to be, but we will have enough that we can send devices home. So that, I think they call it like a homework device. That's what the E-rate is. And then the ones that are budgeted here, we'd be able to retain on site. So I think.
And you said 600 and something. What's is our population not like 1,000 anymore? Okay. So you have 400
that
or
are
so
actively,
that
that we
good to
expect
go
will last
and
for
you
the
can
next
use
5 years.
tomorrow.
I would imagine that, again,
pretty old.
money will have to shift
I
around.
know when those were purchased for me, that last batch of Chromebooks, not the most recent, but like. the
We're only talking
400
about the
that
most
are
recent.
sitting
ones. Those are the only ones that were really operating,
there. Okay.
the ones that we got last year. And I don't remember. I mean, I think that was in the 300 or 400 amount. Yeah, and the ones before that, yes, they were done. They're not. I've seen them, some of them stacked up like bricks.
Yeah. And high school iPads, are those in the mix of all of this, or no?
No, not at this point. We're moving towards they've agreed to kind of move towards everything with Chromebooks so that we have one operating system.
Who agreed?
The high school and the tech department. We're operating on 3 different systems. We're trying to string with Google, Apple, and Windows, and it's just a very heavy lift. So,
Okay.
yeah, but for the kid, I think that it's kind of going to be graduating out
Mhm.
because kids are coming up from the 8th grade using Chromebooks,
Right.
but we don't have any intention. I don't know if the high school may continue through their SIPSA
Mhm.
to offer iPads, but not we're not gonna do
Okay.
this.
And I just wanted to reiterate, I know we talked about it already at IPP, but just the need to, like you said, leave it broad enough that we can do not just Chromebooks, because so many of our families still don't have internet, and you cannot use a Chromebook if you do not have active internet. So all of our students that do not have that, a regular laptop that has the operating system software, Microsoft suites, all of those things, that type an essay when the power's out on their laptop battery without internet, that's who I'm thinking about. So just want to make sure that that's included in this, and that number can capture all of that.
Yeah, and I've had a discussion with David about that, and it's definitely, it makes sense. So we talked about the different, options, which are a little out of my lane. But one is that you take the Chromebooks, and there are ways to make them accessible offline. And then when the child is back online, it somehow uploads everything.
Awesome.
And he talked about the challenges of setting up the laptops. I like laptops personally, but mine is set up, and he talked about the Windows ecosystem. Again, David's somewhere out in the universe watching us, so I don't know if he could address it, but it was there is a lot that goes in the back door that somebody that's not technically like me doesn't understand, but actually creating the Windows, we called it the Windows ecosystem. So we did have that discussion about that need for offline.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be laptops, that's just what I thought of, but
Yeah,
it's
so he's gonna look
whatever
into that.
works to do
Chromebooks that
offline.
work offline, I don't know how that would work,
Okay.
because I don't think of them having the same kind of hard drive as
Great, I just know that's still an obstacle for lots of our families and children.
Saying some that still don't have internet, curious that we had paid for a number of families to get hooked up to Acorn Wireless.
Yes.
And I heard last, it was towards the end of the school year that they still were having a hard time reaching all of the people on the list because they weren't answering their phones. I don't know if they were seeing a 800 number and not answering, thinking it's wasting their time or what. I'm wondering, do we have an update on whether everyone on our list?
We can get an update because I know that was addressed, that did come up. And I'm trying to think when that was. I think it was in the beginning of September. And we're looking back over the list to address anybody that was not able to get connected. And I don't know what the outcome of that was though.
So
unfortunately.
I guess my question then, I don't know if we've used up all of the money that was allocated for that, or if there are still some families that were not on the list that would be with that, if this covers any of that.
We'll have to do a follow-up on that one. I know that we were close.
Yeah, they started hooking up, I got mine, so I know they're past their list or whatever they could do with their list. I'm just curious if there's others in need from the school. And I love my Acorn Wireless.
That's good to hear.
I mean, we brought that, again, it's in there broad. We didn't specify like specifically for Acorn. We just thought there, things come up where we have opportunities. So that's why we included
It's, you know,
connectivity, including the hotspot subscriptions. But then we'll be ready to pay for something and then some grant funding comes through. So it'll give us some flexibility. And that would be a great thing for all of our families to have that.
It'd be good to know how many actually do have internet at home throughout the district. So we know where we stand on that, because I do, from what I'm reading, the state is looking at the digital divide and putting more money into computers for schools. So where do we stand? Where's our need? You know, we need to be prepared. Money props up and
Have the data.
we have the data.
I know it's like last year at this time, everything was about providing internet and devices. And now
Business
everything
learning.
has been, how do we, where kids are in school, school is open. And yeah, it's shifted a lot, but that need is a long-term issue.
Well, and especially, I read in here somewhere that, was it the high school kids wanted online academic support after school or homework help or some, I read something.
They wanted, they prefer in-person after-school tutoring to online tutoring.
Oh,
So they want us, they want our people, which I thought was great. It was
they is.
they as the students, no, the student surveys said they would prefer to stay after school to do tutoring over getting academic support online. Which says a lot about our staff and relationships with the students and how they learn, and maybe they're tired of Zoom meetings and want their teachers to do that.
Does that have us run into transportation problems though? If kids stay after school for tutoring, then how do they get home?
We've always run an after school activity bus. So we would
But
probably
for all
just,
schools.
Down here, not all the school.
Well, we've got here the last one, provide transportation for school to home for after school programs, 35,000.
Oh,
It's right in here.
does that mean down our way too?
Yeah, what's the span of that? That seems small.
Yeah, that was just for 1 year. We put it in. It's happening whether we pay it out of ESSER funding or out of the general fund. So it was just, that was an estimate of the additional bus runs that are going, so that we are not just doing after school runs, so we're doing the activity buses. And that was based on just a couple of months of looking at what that additional cost was. So it seemed like instead of it just we're gonna do it. Okay, it's good to have it out of this big pot of money. And I would imagine that, yeah, we may find that we want to extend that for 3 years, but it's just gonna have to be, once we get the reports, looking at the pricing of things, PPE goes up, comes down, we can shift things around, and I can bring this back and say, here's our update, here's where we spent our money. A lot of times we'll budget something and something just doesn't, if something goes vacant for a long period of time, we're gonna wanna sweep that and put that money somewhere else.
Yeah.
We're hoping that we do not have these 2 vacancies that we prolong.
Are there any other questions?
Can we back up to the tutoring academic interventions again? Are those positions as well? Are those like stipends to existing teachers? What does that look like?
It would be our staff. It's not.
So is this one of those examples where are we is this paying extra on their salary?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was I put ELO grant because that we put that in, and that was specifically the teacher's recommendation that they be compensated for after school tutoring. And, in terms of continuity of instruction, that really makes a lot of sense with their kids.
Any other questions, comments?
Did you guys walk through the section before that? The 80%? I know you talked about the nurse.
You can.
There's their page numbers on this.
For the in-person learning, there's a total of $3,799,822 allocated for that section. It starts on the 3rd sheet of paper. Increase health focus staffing, registered nurse, COVID testing aid, additional hours for current staff that are involved in COVID response, cost for current staff time that is dedicated to COVID response. So the registered nurse is a new position. COVID testing aid, is that?
That was approved last month. It's being advertised. We approved it at the.
So those are 2 new
Regular.
positions
Yes,
versus.
yeah.
And is this a 3-year projection or a 1-year projection?
Oh, for the positions, it's 3. But for the registered nurse, the COVID testing aid, I prorated this year to 80%.
Okay.
Crossing fingers that they will fill soon. And that's, so that's 3 years with step and column benefits and everything.
Okay, increase accessibility to school services, increase positions that assist in coordinating school services for students, staff, and families, office assistant, Hoopa Valley Elementary School, substitute positions across our district allow for students to remain in stable cohorts and smaller class sizes when staff are absent. So maybe you, office assistant, is that a new one at Hoopa L?
Yeah, there's a job description. There is a school, there's an office assistant at Trinity Valley. I don't remember the full-time equivalent. It's not full-time. But through discussions with the staff and the administrative staff at Hoopa Elementary, their staff are directed to deal with COVID-related issues a lot. In terms of just affording everybody a little bit of more coordination for students. That was something that I had a discussion.
So is that an additional position?
It would be
at
at
Hoopa L?
Hoopa L, yeah, we have the job description, so.
Yeah, we already have the job
Yeah.
description, but it's a
Just-
new position.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have almost half the students in the whole district, so
Right.
they do need additional. help.
And we have found in addition with the independent study, that attendance is really hard. I mean, the attendance secretaries are busy and they're asking teachers, please get your attendance in, or they're fielding phone calls. And so the office assistant would be able to, address a lot of the issues that students, staff, and families have that don't have to be, interrupting the attendance and the front office secretary.
Okay, then moving the next one, increase communication system and supports. Upgrades to server to increase bandwidth and internet speed for educational technology communications and district operations. Boy, that needed. I'm hearing when students are testing, payroll goes down to
Yes.
0.
That's bad.
It's bad. Subscriptions to electronic communication systems, Secretary for Informational Technology Department. That's a new position.
That's new.
Huh?
Yes.
Increase public information, digital platforms, printing, contracted services with HCOE, the Communication Center, and or other media vendors, costs associated with publishing, training of personnel. And so that one there, I think that for our communication, I know we need to beef that up, so that looks good in there to me. Anybody else comment? And signage to increase visibility and access to services. Any questions on that one? Any clarifications? Okay, the next one, improve the quality of facilities to ensure access to a safe physical learning environment. Generators afford continuous access to in-person learning. During our frequent power outages, students are able to remain in their classrooms because HVAC systems can continue to operate and there will be access to educational technology. So the action here, the cost would be install a portable classroom at Orleans Elementary. The increased space so that students are able to participate in activities with allowance for distancing and smaller group sizes. That's been an ongoing issue at Orleans, and
Fix that sentence. It sounds weird.
So we're doing a shift, so we had some information that there was gonna be some increased cost to building and everything, so with the discussion with the county, we were able to, we're gonna shift it over so that we can go, all right, here it is, and so there's no more, utilizing just a small pot of money to make this happen, we're shifting it, and the need is now related to COVID and the spacing, so it fits in even more so. So that's why it's here. We've shifted this for that.
install HVAC systems in 2 wings, one at Trinity Valley Elementary School and one at Hooper Valley High School. Maintain indoor air quality and minimize disruptions to instruction during wildfire season. So that's the games wing at Trinity Valley.
Yes,
And we have the computer, we just need to pay for the, it has to be in an enclosed structure and it has to meet certain specifications, all of that good stuff. Now, the one at Hoopa Valley High School, is that the wing that has not been renovated?
right. Correct. Yeah, and this is just for the ventilation systems.
So the ventilation system is one at the Trinity Valley. It's that last wing closest to the back.
Kindergarten.
Yeah, and then the middle wing at the high school for the HVAC. The generator is, it's not spelled out. That
No,
was
I
for
didn't, I can
Trinity
list
Valley.
the sites with generators. I was just trying, so TDES, Captain John, District Office, the HVHS portables, and the MTO building.
Now, what kind of tables will they be replacing for the cafeteria at Hoopa Valley for elementary school?
The ones that are folded up right now, they're broken, so some of them don't even come out into the wall, they just have the manual push around. And that building was built
2003. 3, somewhere.
Yeah, and so it's been a while, and this is a really good opportunity for us to get those tables.
Those tables are a menace.
Yes, they're scary.
When I've gone
I know I
to,
fell on one time. when I
Yeah,
when
went
I've
to-
gone to after-school programs, they're,
The whole thing folded down.
yeah, they
Yeah.
fold, they do
Yeah.
this, they really need to be replaced. They're not safe.
So you're gonna do like round tables with chairs or something, or what?
No, I think they'll probably just go in and have them so they can roll up, and it could be used as a multi-purpose room.
But they can separate them more for COVID stuff.
We would have to look at the design as to what we could find, if we could break them apart once they come out of the wall.
Yeah.
I mean, we'd have to look and do some more research, but definitely need to have those.
Yeah, because Missy was saying if any of them are broken to where they aren't using them, now we've lost space to spread kids out, so. Yeah, so that's specifically for people.
Yeah, I know originally when that cafeteria was built, the one room on the northeast corner was supposed to be for storage. And we needed space so bad there that, what was it, a computer room, Indian Ed for a while?
I think it was language.
Language.
Yeah.
Language was in there, I think,
In that
SB65
corner, in
outreach
that
was in
corner
there.
one.
I think that the
They're
resource
resources
teachers,
now.
resource use it, yeah.
Yeah, they've had many uses in that general area.
So I guess what I was thinking is if tables, if they could be something more movable, they could be stored in there instead of popping out of the wall. I don't know. I'm
Yeah,
just
we
gonna
can
take,
take a look at like a design, like I said, if they fold out and they can unclip for some, you know, just to get that moving around.
I do think, I mean, that's how I read it as well, was just for greater physical distancing, so I think we should do that. Just because I know even for our kids that are returning to our centers, they are super distanced and all the kids are like, what the heck, like, we don't do this at school. And they're like, you don't, like, why not? So we're like distancing in our center that's super small, more so than they are in the cafeteria at times. And so I do think we need the ones that can pull apart or seating options, I guess, so that there's that flexibility if and when we need.
Yeah, that's what they put in Orleans, was the ones that unclip and. Yeah.
Okay.
But I think those were not meant to unclip from the wall. That's why they're so dangerous, because they were supposed to be they're supposed to stick in little holes
Mhm.
there.
Yeah, that's why we
Okay.
didn't do a replacement on them. They're just outdated. They're outdated.
and then moving on, next, back of that page, install hydration stations, bottle filling stations, install control panels in the Trinity Valley Elementary and Hoopa Valley High School gymnasiums to improve temperature control and air quality.
Now there's installing the
what are-
hydration, are those all the schools? Because some schools have it already.
Right, just the ones that don't.
And it sounds like some need to be replaced as well is also what I'm hearing, like the high school ones are not functioning very well right now, I've heard from students.
I don't think they're not functioning at all because of the safety aspect. I think they're covered. I don't think anyone's supposed to be using them right now.
The
So then why
hydration
are,
stations.
Yes.
so walk me through why we're getting these hydration stations then.
I think they're using the bottle filling, not the drinking fountain part of it, they're one unit. I mean, it could.
No,
be
I think those are broken, that's what I'm saying.
So yeah, Missy just did her walkthrough, so. I don't know them to be broken, but that wouldn't mean they're not. So I think she's just doing her facilities inspections now, so.
But hoping that every site will have access to those.
Okay, then install control panels in the Trinity Valley Elementary School, Hoopa Valley High School gymnasiums to improve temperature control and air quality. Control panels, in Trinity Valley Elementary, do the other elementary schools have that
They
capability?
have them, and I think this may have came about from from a walkthrough. In that it was determined that the controls, they're working, but it's not to
it's working and it's running. It's like full on. It's like we
said
don't
it's
have
not-
control of that
there's-
panel and it was just 85 in here the whole time or something of that nature
There's no thermostat.
There's no
on those
thermostat.
two.
on those two for some reason. And I don't know why. And so they're, yeah. I don't know why it ended up like that. I couldn't explain that one.
Okay, and then the last one, they're maintaining high air quality with frequent filter replacement, personal protective equipment and cleaning supplies. So that's the 200,000 to keep the filters replaced.
Yeah, it's about 6,000 a month for our filters. That's an average.
Okay, so I think that's the whole, any other questions, any other comments?
I think Jen answered one of them already. I was curious what happens if some of these positions don't get filled and hopefully they do. If they don't,
Yeah.
the ability to move funds later, or what that looks like to revise the plan if some of these things aren't needed or other funding comes up or vacancies happen, how that happens. Or the flexibility to.
You know, I don't think that we, I'm not sure, I don't think we have to like submit a revised plan. I think it just comes out in the expenditure reports.
Mhm.
Which
And
is
as long as
interesting
you're
because it's a
staying
high
in
dollar amount.
2080 maybe, then-
Pardon?
and as long as you're staying within the 2080.
The 2080 is really important because if we, yeah, if we dip down below that, we, won't- you know, we cannot exceed 80% in that one category. So it would just be with how the board directs, you know, if we're looking at doing updates and saying, we have this $80,000 because we did not fulfill, you know, fill a position, then I would like to see where the board wanted to reallocate the funding. Facilities, as you can see, is a big one. And so that may be, but we really tried to budget so that we get these major projects that clearly need to be updated. Sure.
And then can you remind me the time frame again, what's the obligation? Is there an obligation liquidation period or is it just funds need to be expensed by a date?
June 24 of 2024. What do you mean by liquidation? Sorry.
Some funding, you have so many years to obligate and like a liquidation period, but
I think it has to be spent. I don't
spent
know if it's
by
encumbered or
June 24.
Spent by June. Yeah. So not encumbered. And so I think that's good that we have the time. It's not like
Right.
6 months to figure out what you want to spend this on. So I think that that will be helpful. And I do think that there are going to be adjustments, you know, I think if, depending on how our COVID surveillance goes, you know, right now we want to kind of hang tight with having a lot of, be able to put a lot of resources there because we have been successful in keeping the school-based transmission really, you know, down to nothing. So we want to keep that heavy. I don't know what the state will direct us in terms of, you know, do we have to buy masks for the next 3 years?
I do, on the independent study, I do just want to reiterate as well. I was trying to think back to our IPP meeting and things that are kind of in here, but just wanted to make sure that the board hears it as well. For the independent study positions or support that exists, just from my own personal experience of so many times of quarantine, so many times of sick kids that you're not supposed to send to school, but are staying home and not getting instruction. Just like what that process is going to eventually evolve into, because right now it is like, hey, sorry, we're sick. Can you please get me a packet? Or when she comes back, can you please get her a packet to make up for the time that was lost? So I don't know how that fits or where that's in, but I'm sure it's broad enough that that can fit in with this funding at some point, but I do still see that as a major thing that we're seeing with our families, especially unfortunately, because of our vaccination rates at this point. There's just, you know, it's a longer timeline if you're unvaccinated versus if you are vaccinated. So that's, I think, impacting especially our younger students at this point. Some of the other cool things that I learned about ESSER 3 funds was there's a lot of community response that this funding could use. And so I do hope that that's something that the district looks at down the line if there are some funding flexibilities. It's my understanding that the Wellness Center is no longer going to test family members of households of children. And I think just, we know that Kamau is super impacted. I don't know what the situation in the neighboring communities are, but I think that was a positive thing that the Wellness Center was able to provide, and we're gonna pull back on that. So I don't know if this funding could also assist to make that happen again, whether it's a need for more contact tracers or how that works. But I was bummed to hear that that's what's happening, but also understand everybody's capacity is, we're all struggling with capacity. But just needed to make that known as well. And then the only other request that I have, and I don't know if it's possible by the Indian Policies and Procedures meeting on Thursday that we're having that meeting, is just, I didn't know about ESSER until ESSER 3. So I was curious to know what and how we've spent or obligated funds with ESSER 1 and ESSER 2 funding for COVID response for our district.
We had that at some meetings.
We
maybe.
have had the discussion in the meetings in the past, how much we've had and what we're going to be utilizing it for. I can definitely get a report based on the objects. I know we did some salaries for social workers. We did some, obviously some PPE. That was some of our bigger costs. But off the top of my head, I don't really have everything.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I had just asked for it in the last IPP meeting, so just
Maybe
throw
just-
it out there again as something.
Maybe just,
Maybe an email to me, because
Okay.
sometimes I don't receive these requests
Okay.
from folks, and
Well,
and I
assume
get
the
sit here. and go,
superintendent would
"Okay."
give it to the
Yeah.
assistant superintendent, so I don't know if that's my
So-
job matter.
I just wanted to back up to the community testing, and I feel like if we can fill positions, we can reevaluate what our capacity is for testing. So the funding is available. I mean, we have a COVID aid in this plan. We have hopefully the registered nurse, and of course then all of the equipment that comes along and the overtime, but it's really a staffing issue.
Mhm.
So
Oh.
not a philosophical issue necessarily, but I was like, we've got our staff up and running to be tested to test surveillance for staff and students.
Mhm.
And then I think we just went we overextended, and we have people that are working ridiculously long days and are completely burning out. So for it to be sustainable, I sent out a memo to my staff. I was like, whoa, we have to pull this in, students and staff, not people who are sick and can't get to the doctor. Like if a student presents as symptomatic while they're in school, we'll test them, of course. But yeah, and I understand that the need, and I understand that the medical clinics are impacted. So
Well, and I think just the communication piece too, because I know they know now today, but didn't know until today. So.
Well, I don't even think it was really advertised. We were doing the public either.
yeah, it was kind of just people
Yeah.
trying to do good citizen
Yeah.
stuff, but it was never within the scope of like the plan. And it was kind of just incrementally got broader.
I was wondering about in these cases where a child gets sick in school.
Mhm.
And it's been my experience that happened, and that child was taken home and then told to the parent or the grandparent that was there, oh yeah, he's sick and you probably should take him and get him tested. And then that was it. Like nobody said, what time did he get sick or what, like how much was it? Like what did he vomit? Did he just feel his stomach was it? You know what I mean? And there was information and the people didn't know. And I said, well, no, you guys all need to go get tested, everybody in the house, because there was actually 2 kids in the school in the same family and they were both sick. But they didn't have like really any good information about where to go and when and by what time. But the school, when I checked with them, they're like, yeah, they can't come back. They can't come back until we get a note from the doctor saying that they're. And I said, they don't know that because I just went down there and checked with them. And so I had to do this telephone, and try to call the clinic and see when can they get in for testing. And then the whole family was like 9 people had to go. And then the clinic was overwhelmed. And they were like, well, we didn't know you were sending 9. And I was like, I said family, I just didn't be specific. There's 9 people. But you know what I mean? It was just this. And so I don't know, like to me that there needs to be a paperwork that goes home with the child when they go home sick from school.
They didn't test them at school.
No, at that time they weren't testing at school. but I think now they are, or they can.
We've really increased our
But
capacity. Our
but
staff
I'm not
have really-
sure.
Yeah.
That
At the
person
beginning-
that does the testing isn't there all the time. It just comes so many days a week or so anyway, there was questions then about, just the parents and the grandparents not knowing what to do now,
Yeah, it's kind of feels like that situation may have been early on when it was, the only way we would exclude a child was because they, we did screening and do you have any presenting symptoms of COVID, which, there's a lot of presenting symptoms, but we do not have 100% testing capacity. Our testing capacity is good. It's really, for the size of our district, we are doing a lot of testing. But we don't have the river schools, we don't have Jack Norton and Richmond daily.
right?
People can be called down, but to do that, but there's not, that it's itinerant.
There's some really good communication coming out from the school sites as well. So
Okay.
I can say getting that information
Better,
with
okay.
PDF files actually attached to the message when you go in and look. And it'll
That's
have the
good.
screening,
Yeah.
so I can say, I know that's from one site and that was Orleans is doing a really good job of getting that information out there, sharing our charts and our information. So I can, kudos to Karen. At least say that, man. I was like, wow, that's really good.
One other, I just remembered, if we were talking, one other thing of like flexible funding in the future is that incentives for vaccination are allowable ESSER 3 funds. So, or are allowable for ESSER 3 funds. So it does look like there can be community and household, just as we're talking about testing, but the same can go for vaccines. So when I was looking and kind of doing a little bit of research, it looks like if the school district wanted to host like a vaccination drive or something for families and students, they could absolutely use this funding to do that. They could incentivize families and students if they wanted to get vaccinated. I am personally a little bit concerned about the misinformation that the high school students are getting to, whether it be from TikTok or wherever else. But I know that there seems to be some resistance from our teenagers for sure. So that also came to mind as a possible thing either now or in the future with potential funds, if we have it, is that if we can provide some incentives, let's do it. So that they're not having to quarantine for a longer period of time if they are vaccinated.
And just that the simple illness and hospitalization rate, it's so different between vaccinated and unvaccinated. There was a vaccination clinic from public health. They did a facilities use. And that was 3 months ago.
3 weeks ago at the high school, so public health has came in and has done that community vaccination. I don't know if Kamau is going to be doing that or not, doing a vaccination clinic again.
I assume so. I'm not sure.
I'm not sure. I haven't heard anything on the local level.
I think as soon as the younger ones, like if the ones for the younger children, I'm sure they will.
No, they just talked about it at our health and safety meeting today, right? Rolling about doing a vaccination.
Yeah, I think it was
the
the 13th, November 13th. They're talking about Humboldt counties coming in. Yeah,
So-
going to 13th, going to
Okay, so
use the high school.
with the ESSER 3 plan here, a lot of input, a lot of good ideas. Is it going to require any addition or correction to the motion? I think the plan is broad enough to cover these if we can be sure, like it's in the backup or somewhere of these ideas.
Yeah, the only thing that I had some sentences that just didn't make sense. I wanted to clarify that install 5 generators across the district. So. I
Same for the
have
filling
some
stations.
notes.
The water bottle filling stations, that wasn't clear to me that everybody was getting that too.
As far as changes to the written document, that was pretty much the changes.
Yeah.
But there was a request to change one reference to the meeting with the tribe.
Yes, I have adding regarding, the consultation was regarding the COVID-19 safety protocols. Clarification of the generator.
And I think as far as the filling stations, I think if it's just left open, then we can take an inventory of what is not working and who needs one, if there's something that needs replaced. I think it's pretty broad that will take care of
Yeah, we need the data from the site.
Yeah, so whatever's there, the cost is there.
So do we need to change the motion at all? Maybe with clarifications?
That's what I'd say, just say with those minor changes.
Okay, so Tom, you did move and
I
Rob.
move we approve elementary and secondary school emergency relief funds, ESSER 3, with the minor
Clarification.
clarifications that we just discussed.
Okay, and Rob, you seconded? Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Unanimous, that is approved. And I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Debbie moves. For a second,
Second.
seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Unanimous, we are adjourned.